Welcome to the Movement for the People's Party, Tucson chapter. My name is Lee Folks. We've started a national movement that has really begun to pick up steam in this election year of 2020, a movement that will continue all year round, every year, not just at election time. With me here is Dotti O, a Tucson activist who really has a lot of passion about not only Tucson, but also our country at large. Hello, Dotti.
Hi, Lee. How you doing?
Great. This is our first in a series of interviews of local Tucson activists. Hopefully this will be a long ongoing series, but this is our premiere video. All right, how long have you lived in Tucson, Dotti?
I moved to Tucson in the year 2000, so I am hitting my 20-year mark.
Oh, well, yeah, I've been here 24 years, so you're pretty close to
Okay.
me. All right, where else have you lived besides Tucson?
I was born and raised in St. Louis, Ferguson to be specific.
Oh, the famous police department, right?
Right. The
Infamous.
streets, those were my bicycling streets and trick-or-treating streets. So raised and grown up in the Midwest, did my education for dental hygiene in Kansas, and then I immediately moved here to Arizona. This is my second time living here. I did leave the country and I attempted immigration to New Zealand. For many of the reasons which we may get into as we evolve in the movement for our People's Party.
All right, so as you know, People's Party, we're trying to attract a wide range of coalition of people from even some Republicans, some Democrats, the Yang Gang, the Bernie Bros, the Tulsi Gabbard, anybody who is a free thinker, independent thinker, who does not go along with the corporate Democrats. So what first got you interested in politics?
Well, I think my memory tells me that I voted one time for that Texas gentleman.
Ross Perot?
Yes, I made my own little paper button. That was one little interest I had. And then I quickly left the whole world of politics. And unfortunately, I feel responsible for where we are today because I did not vote for many, many elections between age 18 and say 35. Then the next time, I certainly voted for Obama, but I didn't pay attention to anything going on. It was just, oh, that's just politics, you know. And then it wasn't until this election of 2016. The Me Too movement is what stirred me, in fact, and that brought me into the realm of politics. And that was all happening around that same time as Trump was running for president. So as soon as that happened, I became very concerned and more involved. And as they presented to us the candidates for this 2020 election early on, I learned of Andrew Yang when he was first presented as a candidate. I'm kind of a person that I go for the underdog. I avoid the popular braggart. So of course I immediately started searching him, and I really he resonated with me. Despite I've had reservations about the generalization of a millennial. And it broke down any of my preconceived notions about millennials in listening to him. And he's very wise and very smart. I was also interested in Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, but as they started giving their presentations, I learned that they're Republicans in Democrat clothing, that I didn't hear my needs being spoken to. What I heard from Andrew Yang spoke exactly to my need, and I have a feeling that my need resonates with 43% of Americans that are living in poverty today. So I got his bumper sticker, and off I went with Humanity Forward. And that's what got me involved in caring in politics. And I'm a single person living alone with no children, so I do have the time to investigate, to research, and that's what I've done.
It's funny you mentioned Ross Perot. I remember in my entire lifetime, I've been voting for like 36 years, and I've always voted for the lesser of two evils, and I'm so sick and tired of the lesser of two evils. We want somebody good. Just once in my lifetime, I'm hoping that somebody good I could vote for. The only time in my lifetime, you mentioned Ross Perot, was 1992, when he was actually getting 30%. He was like tied neck and neck with Clinton and King George the First. And he could have easily won, but the Bush family in Texas destroyed his campaign. And they knocked him out because I think he used to be a Republican, but he was very independently minded. I was always independent. I supported him because I wanted to see a change even back then. And now I'm kind of tired of waiting. So we got to get active, and it's great that people like you are active all over this country. All right, so anyway, let's go back about a year and a half, June of 2019. In the first Democratic debate, that was when they had like 20 candidates. They like 2 panels of 10. On one of those panels of 10 was Andrew Yang. And each candidate, the corporate Democrats, they got like maybe 9 to 10 minutes each of speaking time because they record the times. Well, he got less than 3 minutes, less than 1/3 of what the other ones got. And he had his microphone turned off by the NBC corporate media for almost the entire debate, while almost no questions were directed at him. He only had, I think, 2 minutes and 56 seconds of speaking time, not even 3 minutes. Why do you think that among the 10 candidates on the stage that night, he was given the least time to speak?
Well, I believe it goes right back to the our systemic racism in this country. And the racism is meant to also quell intelligence, free thinking, not just color, or not just your race. And so I think it was a Democratic regular, they didn't want Marianne Williamson to be heard much either. They wanted those people off that stage because my personal belief is that because they knew they were bringing ideas to the table that no one had ever talked about before, and that human beings in this country could relate to, where all the other candidates might have a few little points you can relate to, but it's the same old narrative. You and I could predict what comes out of every Democratic candidate's mouth probably for the last 20 years. It's the same page, it's the same playbook. We're sick of it. And those 2 people were standing out above the others. And I think also the DNC knew in their hearts originally they would never let Andrew Yang come to the forefront for 2020. They weren't going to allow it from the first get-go, even though he met all of the requirements and he hung in there, I think, for 4 debates. They knew he wasn't going to make the threshold. You know, they were just convinced. But in fact, Andrew Yang's Yang Gang has grown since then.
That's great. We hope to grow it even more and incorporate them into Movement for a People's Party. Also, Tulsi Gabbard would not march in lockstep. She was not a cookie cutter corporate Democrat either, so she was shut out of the process too.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Long before the coronavirus broke out, Andrew Yang was the first American politician that I ever heard of that began to promote the so-called radical idea of a UBI. Well, Patrick, and also in our Tucson MPP group, he mentioned that George McGovern in 1972 was trying to promote a UBI. At that time, I was just a little kid. I couldn't tell you, but I haven't heard that idea in at least 40 years. But Andrew Yang was the first one who mentioned that maybe a year and a half ago. And so some people call this a radical idea. Can you talk about this?
Yes, I can. To the degree that I am knowledgeable, there have been several attempts in America since our founding where leaders had proposed a similar idea and it was immediately discarded or shot down. Then in the 60s and 70s, based on Milton Friedman's idea of a negative tax, which sort of birthed the income tax that you know, if you only make so much, you get a deduction. I can't think of the formal name right now. I apologize. But it was not considered radical then. They were testing it in different cities around this country, and some families received this. Now they just kind of dropped the ball after that time period and that money was done, but it has been happening around the world in other countries like the Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden have all attempted this, even in some countries in Africa. And for about 40 years now, Alaska began their basic income, their freedom dividend, because of the oil, the benefits and revenue from oil and gas from their state of Alaska. So Alaskans like their money. They have been happy with it. And so we have a template already. And Andrew Yang was, I didn't even know this, but he had been appointed by Obama onto some entrepreneurship for good for humanity. And so from spending so much time listening to him, I really do sense that he's not worried about his advancement in politics. He is not concerned about his own wealth or his own gain. He really is concerned about you and me. Now, we've heard that line from our Democratic leaders, but we don't get it. And so you mentioned, you know, this is when this idea came on board in June of 2019. Me just speaking about it with friends and things, everybody poo-pooed it, you know, thumbs down. There's no way we could afford it. That comment, there's no way we could afford it, or how are we going to pay for it, is what's been ingrained and entrenched into Americans' minds from birth. We know nothing different. And that was infuriating me because even my own siblings weren't understanding. But I fell into a situation in my life that UBI would be entirely transformational, as it has for the people they've tested this theory on. So fast forward to this coronavirus, Andrew's idea was that because he's an entrepreneur from the Silicon Valley, all of his colleagues are the techies. They're the Google, the Twitter, the Facebook, Apple, Amazon. Those are all his colleagues. They know that automation and technology is going to remove the need for human beings to go to work. And a universal basic income, a means of just housing, food, health, your basics would be taken care of. So when he presented the idea, he presented it with, I've already talked with Jeff Bezos. I have talked with some of these CEOs, and they agree we are going to need this or something very similar to this, because they know what's coming ahead. So that's what frightened me. In Tucson, in the next 10 years, they predict 40% of the workforce will be out of work due to automation. 10 years, 40%. That's huge. We're only a town of about 1 million people. That's near half of our people. And technology is happening faster and faster. Already we're seeing, they're testing in Oregon, some McDonald's are flipping burgers with robots. They're testing this theory out. There are a few grocery stores where there are only 2 employees, one for surveillance, security, and one other one for questions. Otherwise, you walk in, you pick up your things, you scan your card, you walk out, and you don't deal with anyone. It's going to happen. And I think the Democrats and the Republicans are stuck in the outdated prehistoric times, and they don't want to accept this new line of thinking. They just disbelieve that technology will replace humans. And I see it, and I believe it, and I see it in healthcare. I don't know how much you want me to go into that. So his idea was that we're going to need a basic income because technology is going to take away jobs. First, it's going to be big trucking. That will also help green energy. So a lot of his plans overlap other good ideas that will help humans and this planet. So the trucking industry might be one of the first places. Meat packing, they're already testing robots that can work in meatpacking plants. So let's look at the Midwest and all those places. They're going to be out of jobs. And the whole line that Trump likes to say about, we've got more manufacturing going on, but with less human bodies. That's what they don't tell you. We do have more manufacturing today than we did 10 years ago. So that looks like we're doing really well as a country, or we have a low unemployment rate. That does not mean that more people are working. And in fact, it's less, and it's going to get less. And we will be caught with our pants down, just like with this pandemic. So the pandemic came along, and Andrew said, well, this isn't what I was expecting, but this is exactly the type of situation when we have mass sudden unemployment. And he understands, because he has a family, his child has autism and has many needs, and his wife needed to stay home to attend to those needs and couldn't go out into the workforce. And he realized, all the mothers that can't work because they're parenting are worth nothing. They have no gross national, they're not worth anything. They're of no value, but they are doing the most important work on this planet. So he brings humanity into it. He brings our value as a person into it. And And so he knows the system is very difficult to apply for help, to apply for food stamps, to apply for the Medicaid type of health care. The daunting, shame-producing, it's inhumane what they put a person through in order to get a Social Security benefit or to get any help when you have found yourself in a place of poverty and you can't make your bills.
Yeah, I saw a video clip of Andrew Yang meeting Obama in the White House. I think it was from around 2010. I'm not sure the exact year. And yeah, the Amazon, the capitalists really are only about 10% of the people or less. They're the ones making money off of us. And probably more like 5% or less, the landowners. And Jeff Bezos, for example, while he's accumulating $200 billion of personal net worth, he claimed he could not afford to pay his employees more than $11 an hour. Well, last year, Bernie forced him to raise it up to 15, but only because he was forced to. And they kind of see us as disposable. And the way they throw us out is they basically put us homeless. And then we become, in their eyes, we're like human trash. And the humanity aspect of it is huge.
It is. And that's a point that I really think that hasn't been talked about. He ran for president because he wanted to, it doesn't matter if we get the best leader in the White House. The system is fractured. The mechanics of how our system or our capitalism works in this country is, well, I shouldn't say it's broken. It was meant to be broken. It's working exactly as it should. It's working as it was designed. And unfortunately, that means that only the top 1% get gains and the rest of us struggle. And to be proud that someone works 3 jobs, you know, is insanity. And that plays into the other aspect of humanity that Andrew Yang addresses with gun control, crime, those other human social aspects of humanity. Is we have some of the highest crime rates. We have the highest incarceration rates. Imagine if everybody had enough money, a $12,000 a year to help you with your electric, your gas, your rent, your basics. They have done tests and studies and they have plugged these numbers in to see, yes, indeed, there would be less crime. And when they did these UBI studies in other countries, they found that crime went down, happiness went up. There were a lot of social markers that improved. And the stress that happens to the physical body affects healthcare. And that's another big problem we have in our country is who's going to pay for it? Half of us aren't insured. The other half have insurance and they love it. And, you know, it's just a mix of and don't even get me started on that our healthcare system is also broken. It's for profit. It's actually working the way it was designed as well. So I keep needing to retract the word broken because it's not. It is working perfectly the way it was designed to work. And so all his plan for UBI affects all of these other aspects. I can attest with my own story in that in 2012, I had been working as a dental hygienist, living my life, not rich by any means, not really saving anything, but I was getting by well enough. And I was in a 3-car pileup. And then there were 3 more car accidents for me between 2012 and 2019. Those car accidents disabled my body enough that I couldn't perform my task of dental hygiene at a full-time basis. So as the years went on, the chronic pain from whiplash, which everybody should know today, and if you don't, just Google whiplash and you'll know that it doesn't take much to end up with chronic pain, neuropathy in your hands, headaches, chronic conditions. And then stress of the pain creates chronicity and disease in the organ systems. So from 2012, my workload slowly decreased. I could see less and less patients per week because of my pain and because of my disabling ability to feel what my hands were doing. But I hung on because I had nothing else. It's all I knew how to do. I had never learned about computers. I didn't need to. I was working with human beings in their mouth. I was not eligible for food stamps because I made about $150 too much a month. And I definitely was not eligible for even Obamacare. The only plan that I could afford at $25 a month, there was one doctor in Tucson and he was a urologist. And the closest emergency room was Phoenix, was in Maricopa County. So why am I going to give $25 a month to an insurance company and with a $10,000 deductible? So Obamacare didn't work for me either. I kept falling through the cracks no matter what. Now, when I became a hygienist, I'm going to backtrack here to 1998. I was advised to get disability insurance because a dental hygienist out of 47 professions is the most dangerous to the health. You can Google that. There was a study done in 2017. And they advised that I get disability insurance. So I went to do that and I was denied coverage from the waist up. So my advisor said, it's not worth the money, don't do it. The next advice he gave me was become self-employed and become a corporation. At least you'll have some kind of protections. So I did that. So for 22 years, I have been a corporation paying into unemployment insurance, just like Amazon does. I did everything by the book. I did everything that was advised to me legally and on the books and honestly. In this January of this year, I was at my breaking point physically of illness, and I went and applied for disability. In shame and horror, I felt I didn't want to have to do it, but I knew that I was no longer going to have, my patients were not going to be safe in my hands if I continued to work. And I was only working 1 day a week. But I had 4 and 5 other gig jobs that were not full-time. They were just gig. So they were gig employment with no benefits, no nothing. I was all on my own. I went to apply for unemployment in January of this year, and several lawyers told me all the same thing. Self-employed people 100% of the time lose their disability case. You will try twice and get denied. That happens to everyone. It will take you upwards of 7 years before they may even look at your case. You have to be destitute. You have to quit working entirely and show no income. And the kicker for me was that I didn't have ongoing medical expenses to show, because chronic pain doctors can't help you. I could not take opioids. I could not perform dental hygiene and be popping pills, for pain. So I left that experience completely feeling betrayed by this country in every way, shape, and form, because I've paid into the system. I've done everything right, and I've served the community in public health for 32 years. And that was when I got really hungry about politics and really interested in this universal basic income, because my rent had gone up. I had to move out. I'm staying at someone's home that's for sale. The minute it sells, I'm going to be homeless again. And that $1,000 would get me a roof over my head right now. And then I would have to figure out what I'm going to do for the rest of, my expenses. But this is what most people go through, the stress and worry of every month, how they're going to pay a bill. And for me, it was another car accident. That's 3 vehicles I've had to replace in 7 years. So, and then my car insurance went up as well, because on one of them, I hit somebody behind me because the person behind me hit me, so this happens everywhere and all the time to the common person. What stressors they may be, their children or whatever. So I am in full support of this universal basic income. I sure hope that the Movement for a People's Party will continue to explore this, because this idea is growing in its momentum. It's happening in other countries already on pilot versions of it. And Andrew Yang, when the pandemic happened, he realized $1,200 one time is not going to do much. So he started a fund, and I was a recipient of a micro grant from him for $250. Now that's very little, but he didn't ask how much I earned. He didn't ask what I do. He just said, tell me your story in 400 words. I didn't have to jump through hoops or upload my bank accounts like the SNAP program, the food stamp program. So he sees how painstakingly difficult applying for help is in this country. And that many of us just say, screw it, I'm not going to do it, which is me. I can't do it. It's too stressful. I start crying. My gut starts hurting, or I get diarrhea. That's happening to everyone. It's not just happening to me. I'm a healthcare provider. I know what to do to calm my stress, and it's still happening to me. And now I have autoimmune disease as a result of this past 7 years of massive amounts of stress and lower and lower and lower income. Yet I am only 53, and I have just now cashed out my Roth IRA. I am spending the final amount of any money I have to my name. I own nothing and I owe on a car, and I'm only 53. So, you know, a lot of people, there was less suicide when they tested this, because suicide is related to why? I'm never going to make any more money. Even if I get a tax break, I can't save, because it just, that's how our system works. It's working really well the way they set it up. And it was based on the system of slavery, free labor. And when you mention that $1 an hour business, you know, 15 is what we needed in 2016. Now we need 20 an hour.
Yes.
At least.
Even that's hard to survive. Yeah, I'm 60 years old. I got a college degree 35 years ago. Yet, why is it I have nothing? No house, no car. Well, I have a car, but I got to make payments on it. So really, I've never really owned anything. 35 years, and I've had 2 bankruptcies, both in the last 10 years, despite working a full-time job as a teacher. Why do teachers have to file for bankruptcy? And I'm very frugal with my money, you know. Despite that fact, I do my own car repairs, all kinds of stuff. So anyway, well, you've covered a lot of issues. That's great. On Tuesday, we get to vote for one of 2 conservatives, either Joe Biden or Donald Trump. Or you could write in somebody else, or libertarians on the ballot too. Green Party was knocked off the ballot in Arizona. Even though they qualified, the Democrats went into 15 different states, including Arizona, to knock the Green Party off the ballot. You know, you can still write them in, I guess. But anyway, we just got a few minutes left. So how about student debt? Can you speak to student debt, which has become excessive in the past 40 years?
Andrew Yang's policy on that is, yes, he definitely wants to greatly reduce that. But again, he sees it as a problem behind the scenes with the schooling. Why are they allowed to raise their tuitions? So he wants to fix what's broken there so students don't end up with all that debt. We don't want to go into the next decade forgiving 200,000 here, 200,000 there. That's not smart. That's not financially smart. So he wants to forgive what's here and now, but going forward, we need to correct the system so there isn't that, so students do not graduate with that accumulated debt. So absolutely he is in favor with his own version of it.
Yeah, I could say, well, I've been, like I said, I've had a college degree for 35 years. I've been working for like over 40 years, and I've been a permanent debt slave. Here, and if an older white male is a permanent debt slave, what does that say about younger people, about Latinos, Blacks, Native Americans, women? You know, something's going seriously wrong here, and we all have to join to this party. And by the way, I want to show Andrew Yang's website here. I'm going to put this up so we can all see it. This is yang2020.com. And it says the freedom dividend. This is his policy page. That's the UBI. Then down here, he's got Medicare for all, human-centered capitalism. The word humans in there, which is critical. And it's got all of his issues on yang2020.com. And all right, so I think we pretty much run out of time, Dotti. I know there's so many issues to cover. We could go on for hours, but this is a limited video. And I really appreciate your time. And hopefully we could do another interview sometime.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay. Goodbye, Dotti.
Bye-bye.